President, members of the Security Council, I'm speaking to you today from Gaza, where I'm a doctor working with Save the Children's Emergency Health Unit. For 320 days, children in Gaza have endured relentless bombardment, displacement, siege, and death. In that time, their needs have risen exponentially, as have restrictions on our ability to meet them. According to the Ministry of Health in Gaza, more than 1% of the total child population, 14,000 children, have been killed, and this is likely to be a gross underestimate. Outside this room, Mr. President, I am surrounded by overwhelming destruction. More than 1.9 million people have been displaced and are moving through streets filled with rubble, rubbish, and wastewater. The bodies of at least 10,000 people, many of them children, remain lost under the rubble. Just yesterday, a so-called evacuation order was issued for Deir Al-Balah, where I'm sitting now. Overnight, thousands of people have been displaced and are looking for shelter and safety. Clinics, humanitarian warehouses, and supply hubs, all inaccessible. Our medical teams have seen over 13,000 people in our clinics. The children we're seeing are showing signs of profound trauma. Common childhood illnesses have been made worse by malnutrition, lack of water, and the absence of medications. Supplies of antibiotics, pain relief, and even fridges for vaccines have been blocked by the government of Israel. We are seeing the willful and repeated obstruction of humanitarian assistance in Gaza. My team has been waiting for life-saving medications for 4 months. They are held at the crossing route gates by a myriad of rules and restrictions, many of them unwritten and arbitrary. In locations where we operate, families have been forced to relocate up to 10 times due to ongoing violence or so-called evacuation orders. With each displacement, the risk of separation from families, risks from injuries, illness, and death multiply. Let me be clear today, Mr. President, nowhere in Gaza is safe. Our protection teams are working with children released from the Israeli military detention system. These children report sexual violence, including rape. They report being denied food, beaten and attacked by dogs. They report seeing their parents stripped and beaten in front of them. These children are struggling to cope with the profound trauma and mental and physical harm that this has caused. There are Israeli hostages remaining in Gaza, and disturbingly little is known about their whereabouts or treatment. Excellencies, there is now a confirmed polio outbreak in Gaza. The first confirmed case, a 10-month-old baby in Deir Al-Balah, is an individual tragedy, and at the same time, a sign of a larger looming catastrophe. Polio is a highly infectious virus and can infect anyone at any age. However, those most at risk are children under 5. For every 200 children who become infected, one will suffer irreversible paralysis. Polio is easily prevented by a safe and effective vaccine. At least 50,000 children born in Gaza since October 23 are unlikely to have had any of their childhood vaccinations. Older children, their brothers and sisters, have had their regular childhood vaccination schedules severely disrupted. Polio mostly spreads by water, particularly wastewater, which is now everywhere in Gaza. The government of Israel has destroyed the water and sanitation infrastructure, whilst effectively shutting off clean water from entering the strip. It is this drop in population immunity, combined with dire public health and environmental conditions, that has allowed polio to re-emerge. This decimated health system is wholly unprepared to face this new polio crisis, with over 750 health staff killed since October 23 and less than a quarter of hospitals remaining functional. Unless preventative action is taken immediately, this polio outbreak will not only be a disaster for children in Gaza, but may substantially set back global eradication efforts. Mr. President, polio anywhere is a threat to children everywhere. And as we speak, polio is spreading in Gaza, and it will not wait at the inspection gates of Kerem Shalom or the customs desks at Ben Gurion Airport. Let us be clear, we should not need negotiations or special permissions to bring in life-saving medical supplies for civilians. Humanitarians and medical teams like my own should not spend almost a year pleading for the rules of war to be upheld by parties to the conflict. Urgent action to protect children in Gaza should not only come when the harm they face poses risks beyond their borders. there is a legal, a normative, and a moral obligation on all parties of the conflict to facilitate humanitarian and medical access to the full extent needed by the population. And it is the responsibility of every member state, including the 15 at this council, to assure these rights are met. Excellencies, to effectively respond to the polio outbreak, 2 sustained cessations of hostilities, no less than 1 week for each phase, must commence immediately. This time frame assumes that all attacks on humanitarian and medical personnel end now and end permanently. Aid groups must be able to move across Gaza without obstruction. Parents must be able to bring children to vaccination points in safety. Any cessation of hostilities must consist of full consecutive days with conditions publicly stated and shared with all communities. Compliance must be monitored with robust accountability from this council. We must use this opportunity not just for vaccines, but to provide Gaza with humanitarian assistance at scale. Ultimately, the only way to comprehensively address the vast multitude of needs in Gaza is through an immediate and sustainable ceasefire. If the parties to conflict cannot agree and implement a ceasefire, then it falls to this council and its member state to demand and enforce one, including by adopting measures to halt the transfer of weapons to the government of Israel and Palestinian armed groups. Regardless of the status of a ceasefire, full, unhindered humanitarian access into and within the Gaza Strip is essential for all humanitarian supplies and personnel like myself. Mr. President, we have collectively failed the children of Gaza for 320 days. I ask this Council and its member states in their national capacities to take immediate and decisive action. Excellencies, we leave this in your hands.